Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2019 meeting of the Guilderland Board of Education. Would you all please silence your cell phones and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda this evening is the report from our high school student representative.
Hello. Happy New Year's to you all.
Thank you.
So, before the break, the second quarter interims ended, as well as that Friday we had an ugly sweater day. And now what's coming up is the musicals in March, and I bring it up because, like, they're working so hard. Like, during the halls when we're passing, like, you can hear them playing their music and, like, acting and getting ready. The class of 2019 is hosting a volleyball tournament, which is $10 a person, and they're going to create a team when they all get their holds together. The senior pictures came in, as well as senior yearbooks will be available soon, and those are going to be $65. And student government is looking for new ways to change what students don't like, what's going on around in the school, and ways to make the school better for us, as well as we're finding new ways to decorate the school because we think, like, it's kind of bland. Like, when you walk in, there's nothing really popping. Like, we want to see things on the lockers and stuff. So to help with that, today, Sources of Strength, we did a hand trace, and you would cut it out and put it on a teacher mentors. You would go to their room and put it on their door, and you can write your name if you want to, or it could be anonymous, and just say what you're thankful for having them. Unfortunately, like, this is kind of sad, but the basketball team has not been, like, winning. So, like, we're trying to, like, uplift them with, like, the Red Sea and our fans. So, yeah, hopefully they'll get better. We're trying to help them and, like, support them. So, yeah. Sign-ups for the student government basketball tournament will be starting soon. And in the quad, which some of you walk past when you come into here, the display cases, we're looking to put new things up in there. So, like, another activity today that we did in Sources of Strength was, like, write down what our strengths are. So we're going to put those up so that people walking by can see them, the student strengths, and adults too as well, because we have adult mentors who are in it. And the last thing is student government has signed up students for the pledge. And for me, I did December 17th through January 4th. So now we have someone new that is in, and we just rotate doing that just to get active, stay active within our school. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great,
Thank
thank you
you
so
so
much.
much.
That was a great report.
Yes.
And next we move on to our budget development report. Mr. Sanders?
Thank you and good evening. Tonight's topic is fund balance and reserves. And to start with, I'd like to talk a little bit about the definition. We use terminology that people don't use in the real world, so I wanted to try to create some parallels to words that we use and words that people are familiar with that describe the same concepts. Basically, the definition of fund balance, it's an end-of-year surplus in our general fund, and that's the fund that we have that corresponds with our budget. There are some other funds within the district, but this is the main fund that we make a majority of our expenditures out of. So we can either have expenditures that turned out to be lower than anticipated, or revenues that were greater than anticipated, and that, as a result, accumulate in savings. So whenever you hear the term fund balance, we're really talking about savings. And that can accumulate over time from year to year as well. As you've heard before, there is one component of fund balance, and I'll talk about all the components in a few slides, but it's called the unassigned fund balance, which has a limit. It can only be a maximum of 4% of the following year's budget. And then finally, some or all of fund balance, and again we'll talk about the different types, may be appropriated as a source of revenues. They can help to offset taxes as well. So what would be an example in our lives of fund balance? And one thing that you can think about is what a financial advisor might recommend, which is maintaining 3 to 6 months of expenses in the form of savings, that if there's an unforeseen job loss or other catastrophic event, you would have that money available to you. School district, we're trying to do the same thing with fund balance. We want to put aside some money that in case we have an urgent need, we have a place to go and we have some savings available. There are 4 categories of fund balance. Assigned is one where we need to put aside money to pay end-of-year bills. We go right through the end of June 30th, and we don't always get billed out by the end of June 30th, so we do get bills into August, so we need to carry some money forward into the following year, and that's called assigned fund balance. So whatever the value of those unpaid bills are, we need to set that money aside. It's a committed obligation that we need to pay into the future. And we have what's called appropriated fund balance, and this is the amount that we would designate to lower taxes. So there's a certain amount of our savings that we will designate during the budget process to say we're going to use that to help lower our taxes. There's the restricted, and there's some legally defined types of expenses, categories of expenses that we can set aside money for. They're also known as reserve funds, and we'll talk about those a little bit later as well. And then finally, we have what's termed unassigned fund balance, and that's really just our pot of general savings in case we have an emergency, and again, that's subject to the 4% limit. So all of the top three all have designations associated with them. They have rules and limits around. The unassigned is really that general pot of money that we can use for any purpose. In terms of reserve funds, there's 13 that the state defines that are legally permissible that school districts are allowed to use, and they're all reasonably anticipated expenses. So it may be retirement contributions or workers' compensation expenses, but we may set aside money for those known purposes that we can reasonably anticipate. And along with each of those 13 reserve funds are rules that we have to follow, and they're not all the same for all of the funds, but rules about how each fund is established, how it's funded, how it's spent, and how it's closed. In some cases, we need voter approval. In some cases, we just need board approval. In some cases, we don't need either of those. But we have to look at each of those reserve funds to find out the rules associated with that particular reserve. And then finally, reserve funds may be appropriated, as I mentioned earlier, as a source of revenue. So when we develop our revenue sources, we have some of these reserve funds available, but if we know we have workers' comp expenses, or if we have additional retirement contribution expenses, we can take some of that money from our savings and use that to help offset the expense. So what would be a parallel example to reserve funds? And something like a college savings account would be something like that, or a retirement savings account, where you plan for a known need in advance and you set some money aside, but it's for that particular purpose, can't be used for other purposes, and that's similar to reserve funds. Some of the advantage of having fund balance and reserve accounts provide some flexibility. So when we have financial instability, from year to year, we can use those resources that we have available, those savings accounts, and help smooth that out. So if we have a jump in expenses, again, in retirement system contributions, if we have a reserve, we can use some of that money in the reserve to help offset that expense. So we can kind of minimize the spikes that could happen otherwise. We also would have cash readily available, so we don't need to borrow and pay fees and interest. We also will achieve a higher credit rating when we have more money in our savings accounts. No different when you go for a home equity loan or a car loan. The thing they look at is your credit rating, and that determines how much you're going to pay in terms of your interest rate. It's no different with school districts. The more cash balances we have on hand, we'll have a higher credit rating. We'll get better rates when we go to borrow. And then finally, again, having these reserve funds and fund balances resources for us, we can help smooth out those year-to-year tax rate and budget instabilities and make them stable so we don't have large increases and decreases from year to year. There are some pitfalls in terms of using fund balance and reserves accounts, especially when we try to balance the budget, is that it can't continue to be a recurring source of revenue. So it's not an endless pot of money. We have what we have, so if you continue to use it over time, it means basically we need that in order to balance the budget. If we continue to use it over time, we're going to run out at some point, and then we are going to have to figure out another way to handle where that source of revenue is coming from. The only way to do that really at that time is we would have to make cuts in the budget to balance it. If we have unanticipated increases in expenditures or loss of revenues, then we may be in a position where we have to do a budget freeze or do a borrowing in order to get by. So the important part of all of this is we need to carefully manage our reserves and fund balance in the short term to avoid long-term consequences. And we need to be very careful of that. So once you start down this road of constantly borrowing from your savings to pay year-to-year expenses, eventually that source of funding is going to run out, and then you are going to be in a crisis situation. I want to bring you back a few years ago. We went through a financial crisis, as you all know. It started in 2008, 2009, and during that time, state aid was hard to come by. Had some pretty dramatic impacts financially on school districts. And you can see from the chart from 2008-9 to 2013-14, over that 6-year period, we used almost half of our fund balance reserves during that time period. We were fortunate to have that available to us. It helped weather some of that storm. We still had to make significant reductions in the budget. It would have been much worse if we didn't have these resources available to help us through. But again, just in that short 6-year time frame, we used $5.4 million of fund balance. So it's important to have. It can become a valuable tool in situations like this. Some of the impacts that we had when we went through that financial crisis, and actually our fund balance and reserves were much lower, the Office of the State Comptroller designated us as susceptible to fiscal stress for 2 years, 2012-13 and 2013-14. We were one of about 70 school districts on the list throughout the state that had a designation of some form of fiscal stress during that time period. We also had our bond rating lowered, which leads to higher borrowing costs. So our bond rating went from an AA3 on the Moody's scale to an A1, so it dropped down 2 levels. It put us just above medium grade instead of high grade, but we're at the bottom of that tier. In 2017, Moody's does an annual credit report, and they cited one of the credit challenges that they cited that particular year is that our reserve level, while improving, remains narrow. So again, they were commenting on the fact they'd like to see us have more in reserves in terms of our financial stability and our ability to pay back borrowings. And then this also leaves us less options for balancing the budget. So as you all know, we have a property tax levy. It's capped. So we have to look at other areas. So the more or the less options we have for balancing the budget during tough fiscal times, the tougher it is to generate a sound budget that will serve our students and community well. So to highlight some of the categories of reserves and some of the amounts that we currently have, so our assigned fund balance, and that's the amount that we would use to lower taxes, is currently $149,500,000. Our unassigned fund balance, and this is the amount that's our general pot of savings subject to a 4% limit, just over $4 million. And then we have a number of restricted reserves that are listed there. There's 13, as I mentioned. We do not have money in all 13 categories, but we do use capital, which will be used for improvements in our school buildings, so it's a source of funding for that particular purpose. Employee benefit liability, tax certiorari, unemployment, retirement contribution, workers' compensation, and repairs. Those reserves total $8.6 million. So that's currently what we have at the end of the fiscal year ending in 2018. If we look at fund balance, and this is overall fund balance as a percentage of the budget, and this is the most recent year that we were able to attain data for, you can see we're second from the left at 12.88%. That's how much we have in reserves as a percentage of our overall budget. We're second lowest among the 13 schools in the Suburban Council. You can see the range there. The median value is 17.5%, so we're well below that. So comparatively speaking, we are on the low side in terms of our fund balance and reserves as a percentage of the overall budget. And we have been in the same spot, either lowest or second lowest. This will be over the last 6 years. And then finally, to conclude, as we always do, what are the next steps in our budget development process? We're still waiting for news of when the governor might release the executive budget proposal. Still not announced yet, but it's typically around mid-January, so hopefully we'll be finding out that date soon and having some information available of what we might be looking at in terms of state aid for next year. We are continuing in the district our budget development work with our administrative staff. We're also always seeking community input on the budget process. We also, as we get closer to the legislature approving or adopting a budget, we'll also have some advocacy that we will be doing and other school districts will be doing throughout the state. And then finally, we have the superintendent's draft budget proposal that will be released on March 5th, 2019. can take any questions if anybody has any. Yes, Teresa?
Couple questions. The one I had just now was regarding the fund balance as a percentage of budget.
Yes.
I thought you could only have, as per the state, 4% of your budget be,
And this is total fund balance, so it includes all the reserves, all the forms of fund balance. So
I
you're
see.
correct in
I
that.
thought the same
You only have 4%
Yeah,
for
it's
that
the
one portion, but all in, all of the resources that school districts have in terms of appropriated or assigned reserves, and the unappropriated, which is the 4%, all of those resources together are combined in that 12.8%.
okay,
It's only the unassigned that's held to the 4%.
I see.
I was thinking the same, that's
Yeah.
exactly my question.
My only other question was regarding our bond rating. You had mentioned that 2015, we were lowered from an AA3 to an A1. What are we now?
Still at the,
Still at that rating?
yes. they
Okay.
have
When do we
yet-
get reevaluated?
Every year.
Oh, okay.
So
So we can't move up from there yet?
not yet. They're,
Okay.
Moody's, they do a conference call with us every year. They ask for financial information. They meet, they have their own rating structure. So we have a conversation every single year with them, and they release a report on our outlook. And to date, even though we've tried very hard to convince them that we were moving in direction, that we thought we should have our bond rating increased, they have not yet agreed to do so. So
Do you know what's holding them back?
a lot of it, as you can, it's the fund balance and reserves. They would like
That
to
is-
see us have more fund balance and reserves.
Okay,
Bottom line. Tax base is strong, community is strong, all of those other, they look at a number of factors, employment in the region, and so on and so forth. But when it comes down to it, it has traditionally been the level of fund balance and reserves we have.
thank you.
Sean?
On the follow-up on Teresa's question about the credit rating, any idea what that's costing us in terms of borrowing, say, on $1 million?
I'd have to get back to you on that. We did have some of that information in prior years. We reached out to our financial advisor and did ask, but I would have to come back to you with that information. But it does have an impact. It does cost us more in our borrowing. I could get you a more finite number.
Okay, and then on the other comparable districts that have a higher fund balance, any indication that they're planning a capital project that they may be storing away money for a purpose, and that's why they're generating a higher fund balance, or if that's sort of, normal cause of, that's normal for them?
It could be, but what I would say is we've looked at this 6 years now. This is the 6th year, and we've either been lowest or second lowest. So consistently, we've been in that 12th or 13th position. Other districts have continued to be in those same ranges. I haven't seen a huge difference in any school district, any particular school district. I haven't looked at it that closely, but to me, it seems to be pretty consistent in terms of, over the past several years, what school districts have. And the way the chart reads has been very similar.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa?
That would not be indicative of the fund balance chart that you have here regarding the percentage of the budget. We don't know what their tax rates are either, like what they're actually bringing in on an annual basis. Because for them to have, I don't know which district this is, but 41.6, I have no idea which one that could possibly be, but maybe they have a lower tax rate and they're, or a higher one. It's a little bit skewed because you don't have any other additional information as to how they're able to hold that much additional money that's not being used and stowed aside.
Yeah, I can't answer where the tax rates are.
It was more of a statement, not really a question. I'm sorry, Neil, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Sorry.
Barbara?
Do you know what district that is with 41%?
I do.
Can't we say? Is it not public information?
It probably is public. That's Saratoga.
It's what?
Saratoga?
Saratoga. That's interesting.
Seema?
Can you send us, Neil, the districts that are attached to you? Okay. I'm not going to ask you for all of them right now, but the email, that would be great.
Other questions?
Then we can keep track. It's hard to remember.
Thank you, Neil.
Right, this is because we get this now.
And now we move down to public comment number 1. Linda, has anybody signed up? Okay. And then we move to the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the December 18th, 2018 meeting, the CPSC and CSE recommendations, personnel action items, a textbook, and the financials. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Barbara, second Teresa. Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0. And now we move down to information items, curriculum and instruction. Damien?
Thank you. I'll start with congratulations to 9th grade student Nagana Upati. Her review entitled Reputation, A Journey of Discovery won an honorable mention in the recent annual New York Times Learning Network Annual Review Contest, and I've shared it with you in an attachment. And if you've had a chance to read it, I will tell you she's almost converted me into a Taylor Swift.
I thought the same thing. That's so true.
And my second item, again for your information, I've included the link to a blog post written about Guilderland High School's Capital Region Master Teacher, Annette Sabiera. This was written by a teacher who she is mentoring. Annette is an alumna of UAlbany School of Education, having received her master's degree in chemistry education, and she received her master teacher designation, I believe, 2 years ago. Congratulations to Annette. And then finally, we have 3 Guilderland Elementary School teachers who will be engaging in some professional development for the region. There's a workshop that will be led by a team of researchers from the University at Albany, and GES teachers Pat Gagnon, Stacy Kirk, and Beth Tangor, and they will introduce a new inquiry-based science program to teachers and school leaders. New curriculum standards in science and other areas require students to develop deep understanding and engage in authentic practices of inquiry, communication, and collaboration. Their work at GES started several years ago and has been supported by a program called the Idea Thread Mapper, or ITM, which is a visual online collaboration platform that students engage in creative inquiry and conversations to pursue deep questions and ideas and further work with buddy classrooms to solve challenging problems. The workshop will provide an overview of this pedagogy and technology and share a set of classroom cases focusing on grade 5 science. So congratulations to Pat, Stacy, and Beth.
Is this something that they're going to be bringing back once they, are they working on the research and then they're bringing this program?
They've been working on the research for now 4 years now, 3 or 4 years.
They're in their 5th year. They've been, it was really some science. Dr. Zhang from SUNY Albany approached us 5 or 6 years ago. He had got the National Science Foundation to explore this inquiry-based learning and the technology that goes along with it. So our teachers have been really on the ground floor, and every time they teach science each day, we have researchers from SUNY come in, and they record the students, they record the teachers, they take detailed notes, and they meet together as a team at least a couple of times a month to talk about the learning and the teaching that's going on. It's fascinating.
Is it only in grade 5?
It's only in grade 5 right now.
Is the hope that this is a technique that's going to, be...
Yes, it is, because it's been very exciting for the teachers and for the students. Dr. Zhang's research, he's reaching out to other schools right now, and there's a school, I think it's Fingerlands in Bethlehem, and he's looking at some other schools internationally and trying to work to connect students that way so that they're sharing ideas, not just within their grade level, but across cities and across countries.
Good stuff.
Damien, when you say new curriculum standards, is that like kind of aligning with NGSS?
NGSS,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Damien. And now we move down to superintendent information items. Marie?
Okay, thank you. I only have one item this evening, which is kind of an update for the board. Right before the break, Mr. Laster and I had one of our regular monthly meetings, and he updated me on some work that his building cabinet has been doing for the last several months, began last year, actually. And they created an ad hoc committee to look at how they team 8th grade students. And the reason they looked was they had some questions about the extent to which we're preparing students for the transition to 9th grade when we go from teams of 100 to the big world of the high school. And they were also concerned about the fact that 50 to 100 students each year do need to be moved from one house to another in order to accommodate the acceleration for some students. So this ad hoc committee got together to examine pros and cons of regrouping all students in 8th grade, so creating kind of a blank slate when students enter 8th grade. And so what would that look like? So the teachers on the ad hoc committee, they actually did quite a bit of survey work, reaching up to 9th and 10th graders at Guilderland High School who had been moved on teams. They spoke obviously with their colleagues, and I think they reached out to other high-performing middle schools who also embraced the middle school philosophy, because that's the push and pull here. We want to accelerate to give students the opportunity to do high school work, but when we do that, it creates a tension with heterogeneous grouping. So the committee has been working for well over a year. The ad hoc committee presented to the full cabinet, and there is a great deal of energy and excitement about the possibility of going to such a model in 2019-20. I'm looking at Mr. Laster nodding, with the hopes that this would provide an opportunity for students to begin to expand their circle of acquaintances and friends in 8th grade while they still have the structure of the teams and get ready to go for 9th grade. And it also levels the playing field, because it's not just 50 or to 100 students who have to start over again with friendships, but everybody does. There's also some benefit sometimes, and I'm sure we can imagine who this might be, but sometimes children who are grouped together 3 years in a row could use a little bit of mixing up after the 3rd year. If you think about how we group students K-5, we never have a group of 25 students move together all the way through their elementary experience. We mix them up, some familiar faces and some new faces. So I wanted to share the idea with the board, because I know how keenly interested you all are in kind of the structures that we've created at FMS that have been worthy of recognition in our designation. And so I bring this before you, and Mr. Laster is here if there are any questions or worries or concerns. There's a couple drawbacks, I think, but go ahead, Gloria.
I'm just going to ask Mike if you could talk about how the acceleration is going to be dealt with on the new structure.
The acceleration sort of will still be handled as usual. One of the pilots we did last year was we tried an off-team pilot, which was another thing that this ad hoc subcommittee was looking at. So historically, we've had 5 sections of accelerated coursework. When you have 4 houses, that becomes problematic, because one house is always going to have an 8th grade team that's 50% accelerated, which contradicts the middle level philosophy of what we believe. So given our enrollment, which has hovered around 350, 380 per cohort, that half team has rested so far in our Tawasentha house, and we've questioned their experience as students on a half team, whether or not in terms of social connections of students. If you think about it from the elementary school, students are grouped in classes of approximately 25, 26 kids, a little bit less, hopefully, for the most part, but they stay with that group of kids for the most part for the whole day. When they get to 6th grade, our structure, we expand that by 2 times, and now we have 50 kids on a team. When they get to 7th grade, we expand that a little bit more, and now they have 100. Well, at 8th grade, we don't really do anything in terms of helping them transition to the high school, where they could be in a class at 9th grade where they don't know anybody. And if you happen to be in that same house for 3 years and you have the same social connections with only those students, how can we help you better prepare for that next step in 9th grade? So what we're contemplating doing is taking a look at the 7th grade cohort this year, and then really replicating our 5-6 placement process at the 7th, 8th grade level, considering student strengths, student weaknesses, partnerships that may need to be broken up. There could be partnerships that have been beneficial between social workers and counselors and students that will keep the same. So we're really just looking at trying to increase social connections among our students within the teaming structure, in the hopes that it will better prepare them for the transition to 9th grade in the coming year. And
So you're still going to have the half team?
based upon our numbers right now, yeah, we're looking to still have the half team.
So how will the acceleration be handled on any of the teams?
we're still have to, figure out where that fifth section will rest, in what house. One of
okay.
the options we could look at is we could put both accelerated sections in Taliesinta. That could be a possibility. That would make the other three teams be balanced. They would each have one section, but then in effect, you would be creating one house that has just accelerated kids, which absolutely goes against what we believe and what we know is right for middle school kids. So it's a challenge, because historically, we have enough kids who are ready to take those high school courses with 5 sections. So we're trying to figure out how to do better for the students who may not be in the accelerated courses, and how can we help expand their social connections so that when they get to 9th grade, they're a little bit more successful.
Barbara?
Did you consider mixing them up in 7th grade and then in 8th grade, so then they even have a wider expanse of who they know?
That did come up. I think the challenge that we see with most students is that jump from 50 to 100.
As a
And
mix.
then from 50 to 4 core teachers now.
Yeah.
So it's a little less like a K-5 experience, K-6 experience, and it's more like moving up to a high school experience. So we don't really move too much from the 6th to 7th grade level, but we do feel that there's plenty of opportunity from the 7th and 8th grade level to expand that social connection. So instead of 100, now I know 100 plus another 75.
Well, the 7th do get the expansion because they're going, the two 6th grade teams come together.
Yep.
So you're really mixing kids that don't know each other. So they're getting that initial,
Yep.
and then in the next level, they'll do it again, which really gives them a lot of opportunity to meet.
Yeah, and
kids.
we think about the students who may not be participating on our athletic teams, may not be as much involved in our extracurricular stuff that we'd like them to be. Perhaps this is another opportunity to find another sense of belonging, another social connection with a new friend. Perhaps they can reconnect with a student from their home elementary school that they have not been with for 2 years. And we feel that those are all benefits that will help them long term. Seema?
Were there any, major concerns that you heard when, they were discussing this?
The survey data was fairly inconclusive, 50-50. I will say the students who in the high school that we surveyed who did move, 75% of them felt that it did benefit them when they moved to the high school. This 8th grade, the 7th grade students last year that we surveyed were pretty much 50-50. I mean, when you ask the 7th grader, do you want to move house? Oh yeah, I think it's a great idea as long as it's not me. We got a lot of those answers. Just to let you folks know, we're sort of doing a little bit of that this year because this is one of the first times that we're actually mixing Mohawk 8B. I'm the house principal of Mohawk 8B this year with Seneca 8, and we're mixing those 2 houses in our encore classes. And the feedback has been wonderful from both the students and the teachers. Last year, and that sort of happened organically because last year we had 2 science teachers just playing with that concept. And that really just took off last year. So we said, why not expand that to specials and see what happens this year? So next year we're just taking that to the next level to say, okay, now let's just mix it up totally and see what happens.
Have the parents been in the loop for this discussion?
Well, definitely parent communication is going to be paramount from this point forward.
Do they know that you were thinking about this to
Yep,
cabinet?
we've had parent representatives on our building cabinet, our ad hoc. It's a regular topic that I've been talking about for 1.5 years now at my breakfasts and our PTA meetings. Certainly, there's going to be obviously some communication that's necessary moving forward from here, explaining why we did it, explaining the benefits that we feel for children, but also saying to parents, if there's information you want us to consider, please talk to us, write us. That's exactly what we ask you to do at the 5th to 6th grade level, and we do our best to accommodate. So, with every change.
Have you thought of having any, evening or afternoon meetings, presentations, and just say, come and
The
learn
ad
about
hoc,
it?
we did talk about it at the PTA level, whether or not we could
Sponsor a
focus,
couple of-
sponsor some, highlight some evenings, a PTA evening where we actually bring some ad hoc subcommittee people and make,
Right.
make a little bit more of a formal presentation for
Yeah,
people.
the more they know, more people know.
But we wanted to get, to come to you first to let you know where the recommendation was at and in terms of the work that the faculty and staff, and we've had parents involved, we've had students involved, so it's been a awesome 16-month shared decision-making process, in my opinion, so.
Other questions? Barbara?
Does this expand by any chance the opportunity for more kids to take the advanced courses?
That's really separate. That's a separate conversation because of our criteria to enter into acceleration. We don't have open enrollment currently, so we do have a certain amount of students who score at the benchmark that, we feel that they're ready to perform. I mean, obviously, we do have individual conversations with families and students if they want to try. Most of the time, those students who do not make that benchmark are sometimes not successful. We definitely have those conversations with individual families, but most of the time we do have to cut it off just due to a class size issue as well. So,
Every year, we seem to have somebody come forward that says they really wanted to go in.
Yep. And if we have a seat, we will definitely have a conversation and accommodate them. So,
Other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Sure.
And now we move down to action items, school business management. Neil?
Thank you. First item this evening is a resolution to approve an agreement with the State University of New York College at New Paltz, and that's for internship and practicum experience.
So may I have a motion to approve the internship agreement? Teresa, second. Seema? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 9-0.
Next is a resolution to approve an agreement with CS Arch for architectural and engineering services related to radon remediation at the high school.
May I have a motion to approve the agreement? Judy, second. Tim? Questions or comments?
I just have a
Seema.
question. I forgot, this is just at the high school, right? So even after this, the problem was just at the high school?
Right,
Okay,
this project is at the high school.
okay.
Any other
There's
questions?
anything else.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0. And now we move down to board president action items, of which we have all of the policies that were presented last time for a first read. May I have a motion to approve the policies that are listed before you? Ben, second. Barbara. Are there any questions or comments on any of these? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 9-0. And now we move down to board committee reports. Audit?
We haven't met, right, since our last meeting, Neil? And we don't have a meeting scheduled as of yet.
I should join audit.
Business practices?
We have not met since the last board meeting that I reported at, but we will be meeting on the 10th this week, Thursday, at 4:30 at district office
Wait, this
This
Thursday?
Thursday? I thought
of
it was
January
like
10th.
next Wednesday.
Uh-oh,
I have next
sorry,
week.
16th. Thank you, Linda. Keep me straight here.
Someone is,
I better change my calendar, I would have been here.
someone is subbing for me, because I teach Wednesday night. Did someone say they're gonna sub for me?
All right, did anybody say they were
Oh,
able
for
to
the
make
business
that meeting?
practices, because
Yeah,
they're
for
going to be
business
here.
practices?
Yeah, did someone want, that's true, we did ask for somebody.
Or can someone check their calendar and let me know?
Yeah,
It would be good if someone could, if there could be a
It would be good to
fourth.
have another set of ears there
Yeah.
to listen to the report from Cliff.
It is scheduled for 4:30 on the 16th.
Yes, district office, thank you, Linda.
I may be able to, I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it would be great to have somebody else.
Okay, communications?
We met back on December 10th. We're going to meet again next Monday, I believe.
Yeah.
Just looking through here, we went back through the self-evaluation, and we're going to, the recommendation from the committee is to continue with the tool as it is. I think we said that last time, so we're still moving it ahead. We discussed the website and social media analytics. I think we're looking forward to getting more regular reports on the activity there so that we can get an idea how well our message is being read by the community through the website. I think what we found there was that with the website redesign, we have less traffic, but people are staying longer, they're searching less, so things are easier to find. So we talked more about thought exchange and the follow-up there. And yeah, the next meeting I think I said is, bear with me, I think this
It's
coming
Monday.
right?
It's Monday.
Monday at 8
It's
a.m.
Monday at 8 a.m.
8 a.m.
So if you'd like to, come join us.
Thank you. Policy committee?
We're meeting tomorrow at 5:30.
I don't know when you scheduled that, but I have PTA tomorrow, So I'll stay for that an hour, and then I have to go to PTA.
Okay. And now we move to public comment number 2. Linda, has anybody signed up? Okay. Board issues, ideas, and sharing. Does anybody have anything this evening?
I gave something to Damien.
Oh,
to
sure.
share. Yes.
If I may, but I'll give the credit to Judy for this. I guess there was a year-end edition of the Times Union, and there was a section in the Times Union titled Ample Reasons for Joy. And one of the subsections in that write-up was called Student Involvement. And Judy happened to catch this. I'm sorry I didn't catch it myself, but good catch, Judy. So in late February, I guess this was February of 2018, there were 11 teams of teenage inventors who gathered at the University at Albany for Startup High, which was created by Guilderland High School student Arnav Kanan and put together by UAlbany New Ventures manager Robert Manassier. So I'm sad to say that our students didn't win the event. One of our bitter rivals did, but I won't talk about that. But they were noted in the write-up as another creative venture, which was a smart cabinet, a fridge or cabinet that uses sensors to track when stored foods are about to go bad. And this was invented by Guilderland students Aidan Doyle, Anish Mupidi, Burhan Bula, and Aram Sial, and Suhan Suresh. And it sends a grocery list to the owner's smartphone as
I love that.
food starts to perish within the refrigerator. Great idea.
Awesome. But there were only 2 things that were noted, and they were both Guilderland, and that's what I thought
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
really,
that's excellent.
it was a reason for joy, I
You
thought.
really read the paper from page to page.
Anyone else? Sean?
I just want to wish the middle school Future Cities team good luck. I was mentoring them over the past, I feel like I was there a couple of times, but they're getting ready for this weekend as their competition. And I have proof of that. I had said to Mr. Corbett, I said, were your students there this weekend? Because when I was driving Jack over for basketball, I saw some activity in those rooms. And I said, yeah, they're working right away at it. So hoping to get down there one of the afternoons this week to give them a final cheer. And I might be biased, but I think they're the smartest and they're the best team out there. So.
Oh, I don't
Where
think
are
you're
where are they competing? Is it
Uh,
local or?
You know,
Proctor's.
Proctors, yeah. So good luck
All right.
to those. Good luck to that team. They're
Good luck.
excited for them.
And our basketball team at the high school. They're doing so good.
There's a game Friday night
Okay.
for the basketball team.
Anyone else? Okay, so then we will need a motion to go into executive session to discuss the medical and/or employment history of particular persons, as well as issues pertaining to negotiations with the Guilderland Administrators Association. May I have a motion? Seema, second. Ben? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 9-0.